Okay, so today's lesson we're going to look at factors that affect plant growth, because tomorrow we're going to be doing our last in-class activity where you will be designing a lab, okay, to test the effect of a factor on plant growth. Okay, so we kind of have to go over what some of those factors are and some of the weird things that they can do, kind of the tropisms that they can cause, okay, in a plant. So we need to learn the components that affect plant growth, okay, and understand how those components can affect the growth of a plant. Okay, and by components, I kind of mean like the components of an ecosystem, the things that are going to be in the places where plants live. All right, there's two classes for these components. There are the abiotic components. If something is abiotic, it is non-living. Okay, so abiotic is non-living. All right, so if we're looking at this diagram of a simple ecosystem, okay, we can see that there is sunlight. Okay, sunlight would be an abiotic component of an ecosystem. It's the energy that's going to drive it. Okay, we would see things like precipitation, moisture. Okay, that's going to be important for plant growth. Okay, they're showing kind of magnifications here of organisms within the soil. That would be a biotic component because organisms like bacteria are living. Okay, there could be minerals within the soil. That's non-living. That would be abiotic. Right, we're going to go over a bunch of the abiotic components, and then we'll look at some of the biotic components as well. Questions so far? Okay, first abiotic component, temperature. Plants are not able to regulate their temperature. So they are whatever temperature it is outside. Okay? If it's 40 degrees outside, the plants are 40 degrees. If it's minus 40, the plants are dead. Okay? They will not be minus, well, they'll be minus 40, but they won't be doing anything, okay, at that point. Any questions, James? Okay, so important factor because its effect on biological processes. Most organisms, with the exception of like mammals and birds, okay, are unable to regulate their body temperature. Okay, so plants are affected when temperatures become too hot because they can lose too much water to evaporation. Also, high temperatures cause the reduction in efficiency of a lot of cellular processes, okay, including photosynthesis. The enzymes that help a lot of processes to work denature at extreme temperatures. That means they kind of break down and change their shape so they don't work quite right. Okay? And that happens at high temperatures as well as low temperatures. That's why hypothermia or hyperthermia can kill a person. Okay? If you get a high fever for too long, okay, I mean your body really starts to break down. Okay? Anyone ever had like a really high fever? Okay? Like you start to hallucinate, like you're really out of it. Okay? You're weak, you're drained. Okay? And the reason for that is the enzymes that normally do things for you in your body can't do those things because the temperature is not right for them, and they bend and twist and they don't work properly. Okay? If that goes on for too long, then the processes that keep you alive stop. Okay? Obviously that would be bad. Same thing is true for hypothermia. If you're too cold, similar thing. Okay? It's not like you have to worry about like actually freezing solid. Okay? Like that would happen long after you were like fully dead. Okay? But you can die of hypothermia if your body temperature drops below 32 degrees Celsius. Okay? Like below 32 degrees, you are really not doing well. Okay? You'll be unconscious, okay, and probably on your way out. Okay? But like that's only about 5 degrees different from normal body temperature. Okay? You're still quite warm by comparison to its surroundings, but it's not good. Your body doesn't function. And the same is true for plants. Okay? All right, second abiotic component, the abundance of water. And I say abundance because I mean that. You can have too much of it. Okay? If it's flooded, it's also not good. Okay? If it's dry, obviously that's not good for most plants, but if it's flooded, that's also not usually good for most plants. Now, are some plants adapted to that? Yeah, some plants grow out of the mangroves in the jungle. Okay? They grow out of flooded waters all the time. But not most plants, they don't grow that way. Their roots will suffocate because there will be no air spaces in the soil because the soil will be saturated. Okay? They won't be able to carry out cellular respiration because oxygen won't be able to get into the roots and the plant will drown. Okay? Effectively. All right, questions on those two? Okay. Now, sunlight. Okay? Oddly enough, that's the third one. Because, I mean, you could have sunlight, but if the temperature is wrong, the plant doesn't survive. Okay? So sunlight provides energy that drives nearly all ecosystems, although only plants and other photosynthetic organisms can use its energy directly. Okay? So it's that initial source of energy that gets converted to chemical energy by photosynthesis. Okay? Now, its importance goes beyond its energy. It also helps plants and animals to have a sense of time. Okay, there's a thing called circadian rhythms. You guys ever heard of that? You get really messed up. If you have jet lag, it's because your circadian rhythm is really messed up. You've flown from some place where it was much later to some place where it's much earlier, or vice versa. Okay, and your body is like, oh, I'm tired, but it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It feels like it's 2 in the morning to me, and I should be sleeping. Okay, your circadian rhythm is messed up. It takes a few days to reset that. Okay, and it can have really, really like dire consequences. For example, when the first rovers landed on Mars, okay, the crews who were running them were trying to stay on a Martian schedule because the rovers were solar powered and they wanted to do all of their activities during the Martian day. The problem is a Martian day is just under 25 hours, which was okay for the first little while, but eventually, okay, people were working in the middle of the night, trying to stay on track with when it was sunny where the rovers were. Okay? And they actually started developing like serious inabilities to function like mentally. Okay? Because their body was, they would go outside and it's like, wait a minute, it's the middle of the day, I gotta go home, I gotta go to sleep, but I can't sleep because it's the middle of the day. Okay? And it was really, so they ended up having to just say, okay, you know what, we're gonna work in shifts, you got this shift, you got that shift, and we're not gonna try and keep up with whether it's day or night where the rover is anymore because it was causing the people to make mistakes. Okay? You don't want somebody to crash the rover because it's sleeping. So yeah, those are the kinds of things. Now, it can also cue things like flowering, okay, migrations, mating seasons. All of those things are triggered by length of day because length of day is the most reliable cue to signal a change in weather patterns. Okay? I mean, we've seen that it can freeze anytime. We can get really low temperatures in the middle of the summer. We can also get 19 degrees in the middle of February if we get a Chinook. Okay? Temperature is not a reliable cue for plants to go, hey, it's warm, I should start growing now. That's not a good thing in the middle of February. Even if we get 3-4 days in a row where it's actually quite nice, it's not a good idea for a plant to start growing then because it's going to freeze again. Okay? What is a reliable cue of warmer weather coming is the day lengthening. Okay? More hours of sunlight means it's going to be warmer, okay? And a plant will use that. Okay? In the same way that geese use that to tell them when to fly south.
If plants are dormant, how are they able to tell when there's rain?
Yeah, there's a sense of that. There's also, with the length of the day, a general increase in temperature. The shortening of the day is a photosynthetic rate thing. The amount of photosynthesis going on cues dormancy. But yeah, temperature cues coming back as long as it coincides with length of day. All right, does that sort of make sense? Okay, and these are all like really, really important. Okay, they cue one thing, which cues another thing. Like if you look on the prairies here, okay, the mating season for like gophers and stuff, okay, is like in the late kind of fall, and then they actually have their little ones, okay, in like the very late winter, early spring. Okay, they feed them in the den, and then just as they're kind of getting big enough to need to eat, it's getting nice enough outside that they can go out and get seeds and grass and whatever else that they need. Okay, now that's important for them, but the time when coyotes and predators of gophers have their young is cued for when their prey comes up, but it's still all influenced by length of day. Okay, so all of that cues when they're going to have their babies. Okay, basically no animal wants to be having their babies if they're outside in the middle of winter. Okay, and if you're a farmer and you have cattle, you know how bad it can be if you're calving when it's -30. Okay, if you're going to lose some of them. So in general, animals will have their mating seasons so that the gestation occurs over the winter and the babies are born when food is adequate and the temperatures are better. Okay, wind. Wind is one that people don't often think of, okay? But it's an important abiotic factor affecting plant growth, okay? Because wind does a few things. It amplifies the effect of evaporation, right? If you want to dry your hair, you don't just stand in front of a heater, okay? You use a hair dryer because it's got a heating element as well as it's got a fan. Okay? It's going to dry your hair faster because it's constantly moving dry air over your hair, causing the rate of evaporation to increase. So things dry up more quickly on a hot, windy day than they do on just a hot day. Okay? The wind increases the effects of evaporation, so it can cause things to dry out more quickly. It also amplifies the effect of temperature. Right? Like yesterday and today, the wind we had made it feel a lot colder than it really was. Like yesterday, it was only about like -7 or 8, but it felt like -20 because of wind chill. Yeah, the wind chill factor is how cold it feels based on how much evaporation is occurring off of your skin. When water evaporates off your skin, that requires energy. And the energy comes from your skin, so it can make you feel colder. That's how sweat works. Okay? When you start to sweat cools you not because it's water. Okay? The water, your sweat is the same temperature as water. Okay? But as it evaporates, it takes energy from your body to do it. You lose energy and you feel cooler. Same sensation when you get out of the shower. Okay? When you first get out of the shower, you're soaking wet, you kind of cool. You get chilled because water's starting to evaporate off of you, okay? And it's not, it's not a really warm place. Does that make sense? Okay. So evaporation can amplify the effects of temperature. It can also contribute to water loss, okay, like I said, drying things out. But it'll also cause weird changes in the growth patterns of the plant. Okay, right here, okay, these are some trees that are growing near the tree line in Jasper. Okay, now it's kind of hard to see here, but this is just a couple of spruce trees. You can see spruce trees just like them down here that are quite tall, but these ones are grown low to the ground. Their branches kind of go everywhere, and they're bent like this. Okay, they're actually growing over in this way. Okay, now you can see that on this side of the tree there aren't any branches, but on this side there are a whole bunch. Okay, it basically grows branches only on the leeward side of the tree, okay, where the wind doesn't hit it. Why would it do that? Yeah, they don't break off. Okay, and if you look at it from the top, here's the trunk of the tree. Okay, it creates a windbreak for the rest of the tree. So if it grows branches on this side only, in this kind of sector here, okay, then those branches won't break off, they won't be exposed to wind chill, and it actually acts like a snow fence. Okay? As the wind hits the tree, it slows down and it swirls. Okay? It swirls into here, and any snow that's in it will get deposited in there. Like you guys saw what happened here the other day. Okay? The snow all drifts into certain places. Okay? The reason it drifts is because there's a sudden change in the pattern and speed of the wind, and that causes anything suspended in the air to fall because it can't be supported by the moving air anymore, and that's what creates big drifts. Okay? So these act like a big snow fence by slowing the wind down and allowing the snow to pile up and cover them up in the winter, protecting them from the harsh temperatures, because snow is a good insulator. Okay? That sort of makes sense? So it actually causes a type of thigmotropism. Okay? The wind can cause a type of thigmotropism that alters the shape of the tree, okay, to protect itself. This is actually called crummels. Okay? The form of this tree, okay, when it grows like this, is called crummels. Okay? The crummels form of that tree. Okay? Normally that tree grows like any other spruce tree, straight out, triangular. Okay? But in these kind of conditions, it grows in the crummels. Okay, rocks and soil. Plants got to grow out of this. It's got to grow out of something. Okay, the thicker and more nutrient dense the soil is, the better the plants will grow out of it. But soil isn't the same everywhere you go. Soil can be very thick, it can be very thin, it can be sandy, it can be like more like loam, it could be like clay, right? All of these different kinds of soil are going to support different amounts of nutrients and have different abilities to retain moisture. If you go to like Drumheller, okay, run into Drumheller, okay, like the Hoodoos and the Badlands and stuff, okay, the soil there is very high in clay, which is why it kind of hardens into that flat pan anywhere where water will run to. Okay? That stuff holds onto water really, really tight. So tight that plants actually can't pull the water out of it. Okay? It just becomes this kind of flat, dry type of soil. The plants don't grow in very well, hence the name Badlands. Okay? They just don't retain, they retain the moisture too well, and plants can't take it out. Okay? Conversely, if you're in the desert, it's all sand. Sand doesn't retain moisture well at all because the grains of sand are really big and the pockets of air around them are big enough that water evaporates out of it quickly. Okay? You kind of need a happy medium in there. Okay? Typically, like potting soil, okay, is fairly loose and loamy, okay? And that stuff retains moisture pretty well. Yeah. Okay? If we're looking at this picture here, okay, this is a place that I had gone hiking, okay, and I noticed that the soil, like the stuff that was growing, I'm above the tree line here, okay, way above the tree line. All that's growing is little kind of scrub and grasses and stuff like that, okay. So took out my trowel and I tried to dig down and see how deep the soil was, okay. That's how deep the soil was. I actually had to put a rock behind the trowel to hold it up because I couldn't stick it in the dirt deep enough for it to stand up on its own. Okay, so this soil here is really, really young. Okay, there's a couple ways to tell that. First off, it's really thin. Secondly, there's lots of what? Rocks. Okay, the rocks, closer to the surface the rocks are, okay, the younger typically the soil is. Yes. Okay. So rocks and soil, they can really affect the type of plants that can grow there because they might be acidic or basic, have low minerals or high minerals, low ability to retain water or high ability to retain water. Okay, all of that can greatly influence the type of plants that are going to grow there. Okay, what happened in that picture? Yeah, forest fire. Okay, we call that a periodic disturbance. Right? Now, you're probably thinking for a plant, that's kind of the end of it. And you're right. It is kind of the end of it. Okay? It's the frequency of these things that can influence what type of plants grow in an area. If you're getting disturbances often, then the type of plants that are going to grow in that area are going to be very limited, which is why you typically see not a lot of things growing near like the floodplain of a river. Because every spring, the water level is going to come up and wash the stuff away. Okay? So basically, you only see like weeds and annuals whose seeds can fall there and grow in one season and then be washed away. You don't see like big trees growing on the floodplain. That's the most recent floodplain. Okay? For big trees and big forests like this one, fire is important. I mean, we always view fire as this really negative thing because it's destructive. Okay, but in terms of natural ecosystem, fire is important. Okay, when we get a forest fire, we get a cycling of the nutrients, okay, which is good because usually by the time a fire has gone through, everything in that forest is already pretty old. A lot of it is already dead or sick. Okay, and the fire helps to just kind of get rid of that stuff, bring the nutrients back to the soil, and in the case of some forests, allow the seeds of those trees to be released and succession to occur. Okay? Succession is the types of growth that happen after. Right? So after a forest fire, one of the first things you see growing is fireweed. Okay? And then you'll start to see like small bushes and shrubs and grasses, and then you'll start to see deciduous trees. In about 10 or 15 years, you'll see like aspen poplars starting to grow. Okay, and about another 25, 30 years after that, you'll start to see the saplings of the small spruce trees starting to take over, and eventually you'll get back to an old growth forest. Okay? Logging companies generally look at an area where either a fire has gone through or they've clear cut and reseeded, okay, as about a 200-year cycle. Okay, to go from old growth back to old growth again. If they've planted it, about 100 to 200 years. All right, hurricanes. Hurricanes are important too. Okay, they again take down a lot of the old growth. Okay, plants that were already dead are going to break off in the strong winds. Okay, floodwaters can come in and they can bring in nutrients. Okay, in the floodwaters. Floodwaters are full of nutrients, so when we get floods, okay, we're getting a redistribution of the nutrients. Okay, tornadoes, same kind of idea. Tornadoes are going to knock down old growth trees, okay, and help to cycle the nutrients a bit. Okay, a volcanic eruption, it depends on the type. Okay, you get one that's mostly pyroclast and ash, and an area will recover within 50 to 100 years. You get one that's like in Hawaii, where it's molten rock coming out, and it just kind of hardens and seals everything in a layer of obsidian. That's more of a sterilization event, okay? And it's obviously going to be thousands of years before anything else happens there. Okay. Now, all of that stuff was kind of abiotic. It was all non-living stuff. Okay? These are things that can affect the growth of a plant that aren't alive. But within an ecosystem, there's also a lot of living things. And within that ecosystem, those living things interact to help distribute nutrients, act as decomposers or predators or prey or whatever. Okay? So these would be our biotic factors. Okay? Biotic factors can be positive or negative. Okay? Some biotic factors are positive. Decomposers are going to release nutrients into the soil for plants to use. Parasites are negative. Okay? A parasite is something that lives on you or in you at your expense. Okay? It's taking your nutrients away. And there are parasites for plants. Okay? Fungi that grow on them, okay, that are harmful to you. Bacteria, okay? Bugs like ticks. Okay? Those don't bother plants too much, but they're certainly no good for us. Okay, so we don't get into that. Let's skip over that. Yeah. I don't know if I have so much about that. Okay, so two kinds of plants here. Are hydrophytes. I don't think I have this in these. I'll stick my own at it. Okay, hydrophytes are plants that are flood tolerant. They live in extremely wet conditions, where they have to endure, where their roots might be submerged, or parts of the plant itself might be submerged for long periods of time. Okay. And some plants have adapted to that by having different types of roots. Okay. These trees here, this is in Hawaii. Okay. These trees here have what the guide that I was with called snorkel roots. Okay. So these are the actual anchoring roots that are below ground. This area had encountered a flood and a lot of the soil had been washed away, so you could actually see the root system of the trees. Okay. But these are snorkel roots. Even when the flooding is really bad, the water rarely gets above this height. Okay? So some of these roots stay above the water level and are able to absorb oxygen out of the air and transport that to the submerged roots, allowing the tree to not suffocate, okay, when it's submerged for a long period of time. These snorkel roots can be pretty tall, okay, because I took a picture, I'm not in it, okay, but if I had been standing next to it, at 6 feet tall, okay, those were taller than me. Yeah, I know, I don't have a neck. I'm huge. Okay, so pretty tall, okay, but it's an adaptation that a tree would need to survive periodic flooding. Okay, or they can just have their roots anchor them and actually absorb everything through their leaves. So lilies, okay, water lilies in particular, are able to do that. Okay, they're kind of a semi-aquatic plant. Okay. The other type of plants are xerophytes. Cacti and succulents are xerophytes. Okay. They typically have very well-developed root systems that are either very spread out or very deep. Okay. And they have tissue that allows them to retain a lot of water within the parts of the plant, okay, but not have it exposed to evaporation. Okay. They've also modified their leaves, okay, in some cases, to no longer be photosynthetic. Right? They actually carry out photosynthesis with the fleshier part of the plant, and the leaves are modified to be thorns. And so on a cactus, the thorns are actually the leaves. They don't carry out photosynthesis anymore. Right? They're just there to protect the plant. Okay, what's the purpose of thorns? Protects the plant, keeps animals from doing what? Eating them. Okay. Now, obviously, there's kind of like a battle that goes on there, evolutionarily speaking. Okay, where animals can either avoid the thorns, like birds, they'll burrow into a saguaro cactus sometimes and make like a nest inside, and they'll eat the fleshy part. But other animals, like an antelope, which lives around here, antelope eat the prickly pear cactus that grows around here. Okay? The inside of their mouth is like shoe leather. Okay? They just chomp, and the thorns just break right off. They don't embed themselves in their mouth at all, okay? Because their mouth is like literally like a shoe. Okay? It's really hard, and the thorns just break off. Okay? And they're actually able to eat the cactus. Okay? An antelope can go years without drinking any water. They have such an efficient kidney, and they eat the prickly pear cactus. There's a lot of moisture in the prickly pear, so they get it that way. Yeah, it's crazy. All right. Now, other adaptations could be the location of the stomates. For most plants, okay, this isn't just xerophytes, but for most plants, the stomates are on the bottom of the leaf. Right? Because the bottom of the leaf is always in the shade. Okay? It's never in the direct sunlight. It's also protected from the wind by the blade of the leaf. Okay? All of those are adaptations that help to limit the amount of evaporation that can occur. Okay? Succulents and cacti also have incredibly thick cuticles, okay? More so than other types of plants. Okay, during the driest months, some desert plants will lose their leaves. Okay, so that's another adaptation of xerophytes. Okay, others like cacti will subsist on water stored in their fleshy stems during the rainy seasons. Okay, some plants will use special methods of absorbing CO2 through their stomates. Those are called CAM or C4 plants. Okay, and they do that they do the light collection during the day, but the evaporation part of photosynthesis occurs at night. They actually separate the two processes. Okay. Now, people get this idea that you can, like, if you're dying of thirst in the desert, you just like punch a hole in a saguaro cactus and water comes out. Okay, but it's so not like that. Okay, yes, there's a lot of moisture in the fleshy part of a cactus, but you have to. It's like eating a honeydew, except it's really bitter. Okay, so you have to cut the fleshy part out and you have to suck the moisture out of it. Okay, and you can do that. I mean, you can survive on that. There's a lot of moisture in there, but it doesn't taste good. Cacti are typically very bitter, and they're that way for a reason. So animals don't want to eat them. They don't taste good, so they don't get eaten. Okay? But yeah, it's something you can do. Just don't think it's like punch a hole and then water comes out and it's the saving grace and you can just shower in the middle of the desert. Okay? It's the same idea people have about a camel, right? Like, oh, they store water in their hump. It's not a cooler. Okay? It's not like a jug. Okay? It's actually
a big old water bottle.
Well, no, it's actually like a big lump of scar tissue. Okay, if you've ever gotten where you get kind of a hard spot where you've got a scar, it's more like that, and a lot of water can be stored in that type of tissue, but it's not a water reserve. They don't draw water out of it. Water has a high heat capacity, and so essentially what the camels do is they allow the temperature in the hump to get higher than the rest of their body. They have this counter-current exchange system where where blood circulates through that tissue, and the hump will get hotter and kind of radiate the heat away, and almost like it runs a fever, and the rest of the camel's body temperature can be lower. Right? So because it's got so much water in it, it can absorb a lot of heat energy and keep the camel cool without having to sweat. Okay? If you're in the desert, you don't want to sweat. That's the quickest way to die. Okay? That's why humans are not native to the desert. Okay? We sweat to cool ourselves, and that's the quickest way to go in the desert is to just sweat.
Do you think if we lived there and successfully evolved, wouldn't adaptations?
It'd be unlikely that would happen for us, just given the way where we've evolved from. Yeah, and evolution doesn't really work for us anymore. Right? We're too smart. Yeah, so we've overcome a lot of that. Typically, your desert animals have scaly skin, right? They're smaller, And big animals don't typically do well in the blizzard. They're going to have diets that are very dry, stuff like that. Like it's just, yeah. Okay, and I think that's it. All right, so what you're going to need that stuff for, guys, is tomorrow, when you're working on your lab design activity, okay, is you're going to need to think about, tonight, okay, think about what kind of a lab you want to design. We're not actually going to run the lab. You're just going to design the experiment. So you're going to come up with a manipulated variable, responding variables, controlled variables, okay, a hypothesis, and you're going to come up with a procedure to test the effect of some variable that you're interested in on the growth of a plant. Okay? Some of the things that I've seen are, people test different things about light. Okay? And I mean, that can be like, differing amounts or colors, or people water them with different things and they want to see if that affects how the plant grows. There's all kinds of things that you can try. Just tonight, think about, okay, what's something that I might want to see what its effect on plant growth would be? What you have to remember is that this needs to be a controlled experiment. You can only test one manipulated variable at a time in an experiment. So if I'm testing the effect of exposure to light, I can only test one thing about that. That would be how much light. I could test like 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 24 hours, but I can't test at the same time that this plant that got 2 hours of light got green light and this plant that got 24 hours got red. Okay? Because then I don't know whether it was the fact it got 24 hours or red that made it grow better or worse. Okay? So remember, I can only test one factor at a time.
Does it have to be like something we could do if you wanted to do?
No, this can be a little bit out there because it's not an experiment you're actually going to run, but the more out there your experiment becomes, the harder it is to design a controlled experiment for it too. Okay? So that's something to think about.